and you wouldn't know a uptown and downtown brother that you will find in brother Oba and Pooh. He has embraced African spirituality, and I think he started out in the Kemetic tradition. It's the same way that I did. But he eventually, through evolution, eventually went and embraced the Voodoo tradition, and under a great priest, and he has grown by leaps and bounds. And it's so many words I can use to describe this brother. He's intelligent, well read. He's one of these brothers who was a hands-on kind of guy. He can point you in the right direction. And he can guide you in the right direction as well. And so few of us in the community have these type of qualities. He looks at everything. He doesn't look at everything in the box. He thinks outside of the box. That makes him a very special person.
He sounds like somebody we can't wait to talk to. So let's go to break right now. And we'll come back with Oba and Pooh.
According to legend, there was a time when Earth was pure, free of all evil. Unicorns, pearl-paved pathways, skies so bright, no night, no problem. When only positivity polluted the conscience, and something went wrong. My name is Insight. Let's go. Waterfall slows down, freeze, the sun leaves. Cumulus clouds overshadow the area. A cave had appeared with a glowing interior. Inferior primates appeared at the seashore. Search for the knowledge in a natural resource. Mind-bound power in the force of a narrow path leads to sacred travelers that expanded to a huge community. Trees clouds down, make room for you and me. Machinery we use spread more pollution. Scientific breakthroughs for illusion. Positive intentions make the negative easy. See these other spectacular species. Reach keys in life, mixing your own formula. Curing the conscious, develop the medicine. Practical principles expose better things. It's the God. Of your movement. It's the
Tampered with, African spirituality, but I would notice that there was behaviorisms that I noticed in the sisters and brothers that I'm saying, if I'm going to do this, I might as well stay in the streets. So that kind of turned me off. I said, one of the things I think about a spiritual system is it must have character development built into it. But I read a book years ago, Let the Circle Be Unbroken, by Sister Donna Richards, now known as Marimba Ani. And it asks some fundamental questions. Can we be African without African ritual? And that question alone opened my eyes up to who we are at the core, our core. And I began looking at African spirituality from that standpoint. Now, I'm saying all that to say this, that without the African or black fundamental spiritual basis, nothing we do is going to work. So that means we have to go back to the beginning. And this is something that I've noticed group after group after group that I would belong to lack that. And I would never commit to any of them because I saw that component was missing until I came across what's called Huyewe Vodun. I won't go into detail about that, but I'll say that much, that it was a complete system, and that's kind of what had me just go all in, all out. So that was my sojourn. Many years of lecture series, organizations, reading books, studying, study groups, to try and gain as much knowledge as I could of our plight and solutions to our plight. And in the end, I found out that if we do not return to our original spirits, you can call them Vodou, you can call them Orisha, you can call them Neteru, you can call them whatever you want. If we don't return to them in our original spiritual system, nothing we do is going to succeed. And to me, that is the foundation of where I stand right now.
Ashe. Thank you for that. That was clear. That was clear and informative. Yes, we talked about your belief that a holistic approach has to be brought back, economic, political, intellectual, spiritual. But piggybacking off what you just said about going back to the roots, let's talk about your name. Your name is an interesting combination of traditional
and
African.
I watched this brother who had a combination of, the Roots Foundation as far as our knowledge and history and the Western academia, but he blended them perfectly. So I was impressed with that. The differences are clear. It is very problematic to get degrees from our historic and cultural enemies. They designed their educational system. They designed it in a way that suits them. They're at the center, very Eurocentric. And we as being African people cannot embrace someone else's ideology, culture, history, so on and so on and so forth, without it affecting us in many ways, deep ways, spiritually, so on and so on and so forth. So the difference being, once you have a profound knowledge of yourself through studying African history, it opens up many areas of your being. Physically, of course, mentally, spiritually. And that knowledge alone transforms one. I'm not the same person now that I was prior to getting this knowledge. Every question that I'm presented with, I have to ask, how does that relate to my people? My reference point is always us. Everything I think and do, I always have to say, well, how does that relate to my people? I'm not thinking from a European paradigm, so therefore things fall in place. For instance, one of the things that I found out when I was going to Harlem was we had the intention as a group, we had the motivation as a group, but we lacked the funds. And I'm saying that to say this: when I looked at the enemy, even if they were doing dirt, they had resources behind them. Even if they had to sell drugs, they had resources behind them. I'm not implying that we should sell drugs. I'm just making a point that they made sure they had an economic foundation to whatever it is they did. And I noticed that we as a people would lack that. And I'll say this, that there's an issue here. We're talking about economics, which we need economics, politics, and culture. There's an issue here. Those are our original, we're going to open up a elemental spirits, Neteru. We also have our Nananami and Samanfo, our spiritually cultivated ancestors. All of us have them. That is our root, our basis. Christianity has infected Africa for 2,000 years. Islam has infected Africa for hundreds of years. And others have brought this up. We have been educated by these Westerners, including the American, in a very patriarchal Western white worldview and concept. So we believe that we can live in this man's world and integrate whatever he's bringing to the table with what our ancestors had. Can't happen. Cannot happen. And as a matter of fact, it is an insult. We dishonor the memory of our ancestors when we try to integrate these other people's culture with our culture. And almost down to the man, it is an epidemic in African spiritual community, black spiritual community. So there are some that are purists that understand that if they want our spiritually cultivated ancestors and the original elements of spirits, helpless spirits, to work with them, they cannot violate those principles. They can't pollute it with these other ideas, God's concepts, so on and so on and so forth. And that's something that we really need to look at. I mean, I'm not going into detail, but the tradition I'm in, even if I wanted to juju somebody, I couldn't. I couldn't work a spell and have some sister sleep with me. They don't play that. There are rules and there are regulations based on divine order, and if you step outside that box, you'll be warned harshly, then they'll leave you. And once they leave you, you're left to these wicked spirits. And the overwhelming majority of these people out here, unfortunately, because I talk to them, I hear other priests talking to me about what's going on, they're dealing with wicked spirits. Because if they weren't, they wouldn't be able to engage in some of the things they engage in initiating whites, and I can go on and on and on. So those are the differences. So it behooves us to find out who the original spirits and find out how to return to our original. In white supremacy are two sides to the spiritual concept. Our ancient ancestors were matriarchal, matrifocal, and matrilineal. But it does not mean that the men were effeminized. It's just that we understood the power of the female and what she brought to the table. It didn't take, listen, there's not a single one of us that didn't come into this world through a female. How can we disrespect that? How can we think that that is less than us? And so you have brothers that are talking this African spirituality, but yet they're dominating the sisters. They feel like the sister's place is in the kitchen, working with the babies. The man's place, he's the ruler, he's the king. And this is rampant with brothers. Let me give you an example. Senegalese sister was over my place maybe about 2 weeks ago. And my queen was getting her hair done, getting some braids in her hair. And, she's sitting there for a few hours. So, she saw me, tending to my son, changing his diaper, blah, blah, blah. My queen asked me to fix me some food. I mean, instantly went to fix her some food. I do what I need to do at the moment. The sister looked like she saw a ghost, the Senegalese sister. And so I saw the look on her face. I said, "What's wrong, sis?" She said, "Listen, most men won't do that. They feel that's a woman's thing." Problem, brother. Because if anyone, and I had to pull out on a couple of brothers, check out the Diop, has a book, The Cultural Unity of Black Africa, The Domains of Matriarchy and Patriarchy in Classical Antiquity, that really breaks down what patriarchy and matriarchy is. Matriarchy is not a man being subjugated by a woman. See, that concept of subjugation or dominant, that's a Western concept. We didn't have those kinds of things. Even in ancient Kemet, the pharaoh was only legitimate because he came through the female line, or either he married into the female line. It was matrilineal. It was the female solar blood that mattered. Men were just the figurehead, not dissing the pharaoh or anything, but it was the female that was behind, in terms of the power of that seat. And once again, I remind every brother listening, you got into this planet through the womb of a female. The first meal you ever ate when you came out of her womb was from her breast. I tell people, and some brothers debating this, it's foolish to me. Child can wrap his lips around my nipple for the next 200 years. He ain't getting no milk. You understand what I'm saying? It's not going to happen. So we need to stop lying about this. Men can give up breast milk. Stop that foolishness. You know better than that. Men can't give out no breast. We don't have the equipment, the gland. We don't have it. So my point is that if we don't return to the honoring, don't get me wrong, I guarantee you, once the brothers really understand the difference between matriarchy and patriarchy, it's going to change their minds about, how they deal with their sisters.
Oba Anpu, you're teaching and we're loving it, but please, would you give us your contact information? We have questions coming out of the wazoo, and we're not going to be able to get to all of them.
That's okay. Generally, you can contact me on Facebook, Oba Anpu. Inbox me, and I'll return to anyone that, feels they need to reach out and contact me. You host on the program, I'll give you my personal information, but you got a lot of kooks out there, and I don't know if the enemy's listening, and I don't want my inbox flooded with, foolishness. So Facebook is good. I can always delete the page if they overwhelm me, but Facebook, you can catch me at OBAANPU.
Excellent. I have just one question for you. I need to know for my personal knowledge. Then I'm going to give you over to Brother Ifa Wumi, and he's going to ask you some of the real questions so the listening can continue. I'm at that age where I had the experience of seeing Dr. John Henry Clark and Dr. Ben and some of the others. Now, we know a lot about these brothers as activists and their public persona. But you've had unique opportunity to sit at their feet, to study with them, to be around them. Let's throw out some names. And would you give us some information on these people that the general public doesn't know?
Sure, I can.
Okay. Of course, Kwame Ture, the former Stokely Carmichael. Did you have the experience of being able to sit with him personally?
Well, one time I met him through a brother, John Reeves, who actually had me enlisted in the organization. Most of the people that I name when I say I sat at their feet, it's not like we were good friends. I spent 3 years at the First World Alliance. Yes, I did meet them. Some of them I did sit down with. Some I have, actually all that I met, I have their books autographed. The First World Alliance was like school to me. So when you go there, depending on your consciousness, you absorb certain kinds of information. You're around the African energy. You're around conscious brothers and sisters. Being a member of ASCAC, pretty much the whole First World Alliance was members of ASCAC. So yes, I did have a chance to rub elbows with them, have personal conversations. I never got to know them as good friends. I mean, these brothers are always traveling. I'm not from Harlem. I'm from Connecticut. So I don't want to give the impression like you was hanging out at their house every day, because that's not the situation. But when you're around someone that very few of them gave as much attention to their health, and they were terrible in terms of some of the diets that they had. So I admonish all of our people right now, don't just engage in intellectual pursuits. Find out what foods we should eat to maintain our health. Because as far as I'm concerned, too many of our scholars have checked out early, strokes, heart attacks, so on and so on and so forth. I'm saying all that to say that we must have politics, we must have spirituality, we must have culture. But at the root of what we do, we should also find out what food is good for the African body, the African constitution, and start giving up some of these processed foods. Because, I mean, the body's supposed to be a temple, and we got to take better care of ourselves. I hate that Dr. Clark was blind. When I first, met the brother, he wasn't blind, but he went blind. In fact, Dr. Ben's health is, terrible. Most of these scholars, they're not really in good shape. And, Amos Wilson checked out early. Dr. Collett checked out early. Dr. Bobby E. Wright checked out early. Asa Hilliard checked out early. I heard Asa Hilliard died from malaria, and I know something that would have cured him in 24 hours. So we have to begin to educate ourselves in terms of our health. What good is it going to do if I'm the smartest man in the world and I drop dead from a heart attack?
Ashe. It is 4 minutes to the hour, and you are listening to the Anu Asafo program with this week's special guest, Oba Anpu. And you're with your host. I'm Brother Wole Ifa, and my co-host, Brother Ifa Wumi. And we are learning a lot about the process. Your lessons are clear and concise, and we thank you for that. Brother Wumi,
yes,
are you ready to pose some of the questions that we all want to know but kind of afraid to ask?
Of course I am. And Brother Oba Anpu already know that I just always keep it real.
Yes,
the question, Brother Opa, you know you my brother from another mother.
Yes, sir.
We always keep it real.
Absolutely.
But the question that I have, and also for the community, is does the voodoo prohibit the practice of homosexuality, pedophilia, and these other types of sexual disorders that are too prevalent in the diaspora? Every Elay temple is affected somehow in the diaspora, and I would like to know, how does every Buddha stand on this occurrence?
Absolute violation.
Also, look out for a new publishing's forthcoming book on shell readings, which will cover the Sacred 16 Major Odu and the casting of the Meriden Lagoon. As always, please make sure to tune in to Chief Jugna Haru Yuya during his Foundational Fridays broadcast, which airs at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Blog Talk Radio. If you or someone you know has a background in spiritual sciences and is committed to bringing a broad spectrum of spiritual and metaphysical information to an international audience, please contact us at anewnation.org. That is ANUNATION.org to become a co-host for the channel Enlightenment and Transformation. That concludes our announcements for this Sunday, and now back to Anu Asafo.
Okay, it's 9 minutes after the hour, and you are listening to the Anu Asafo Show with this week's special guest, Oba Anpu, and I'm your host, Wole Ifa, and my co-host,
I'm Brother Ifawumi Oshundele, and Baba Oba Anpu. I really enjoyed our converse thus far. But I have one question that I need you to answer, either personally or either through your tradition.
Yeah.
And then, can a white have a black soul or a black spirit? Please explain this to me, because that's a ruling thing that's going around in the diaspora. When I meet some whites in the tradition, say they have a black soul, and I find that confusing. And my Ori does not agree. But the question to you, can you please answer that question for me?
I can tell you what I have been told. It's not something that I did divination on. But I have been told that, let me put it to you this way. There are some who look white, right? But they're not. In that case, yes. But if they are truly white, it's not possible. Not possible. So yes, there are some who understand this. There's the miscegenation factor. There are plenty of black folks that have just blended in. You know what I mean? They just made sure they got with somebody lighter, brighter, and down through the generations, they use his money, have his money. He created that money. He knows what spells, symbols, whatever's on that money. What effect, if any, does it have when we, in our spiritual systems, are exchanging someone else's tool that definitely has symbols and spiritual stuff in it? Definitely negative, because the money is fiat money. It's not even made by the government. It's a private institution. Federal Reserve is not federal. What effect does that have, if any, on us when we're exchanging? Let's say it was some kind of a spell in each and every dollar. What happens when I pass 10,000 of those to my godfather or whatever? What happens, if anything? We need to ask that question. As a matter of fact, I would challenge any priest or Babalawo on here right now. Please do the divination on that. And let Brother Ifawumi know whether or not that my query has any validity to it. It's just a question I'm asking. I'm not saying I know, but I think we need to check that out. We need to find out. We just can't keep blindly, exchanging this man's money around, making his money the main thing that gets us in or doesn't get us in. We got to have a certain amount, and for this, we got to pay for this, we got to pay for that. And I'm not saying that some things cost. I mean, if you have tools that are going to be used for your initiation, sure, you have to get those tools. There's no way around that. But I would think that if the divination comes back that there's an issue, that there are spells on this money, then I think we need to find out some other bartering system. And whether it's gold or whatever, I mean, gold is natural, you know, it comes from the ground, whatever we may use. We need to think about that, man, because I think it's strange, brother, that our spiritual systems now, they say that there are more Yoruba traditional practitioners that are white in America than black. Because the white people got the money. So we need to question that. We need to ask those questions, man. Matter of fact, it bothers me that we don't do divination, those of us that have the power, on any of these issues that we have, instead of, you know, thinking about whether it's politically correct in society or not. The spirits know the truth. You understand what I'm saying? So if we consult, ask the spirits whether homosexuality is accepted by them or not. Now, the only problem is if you're dealing with a wicked spirit, it's probably going to say yes. I mean, if you just had sex with a 10-year-old child, you're dealing with wicked spirits. So if you ask that spirit whether homosexuality is accepted, it'll probably tell you yes. That is the danger of doing things outside of divine order. If I do anything outside of divine order in my tradition, the spirits are going to leave me.
I understand and Ashe. Now, another question that I have, Oba,
Yes, sir.
is when you mention the initiation of whites.
Yes.
You said if there's initiation of whites, that cannot possibly be an Orisha, Obasam, or Voodoo, or Loa, that will allow this violation to occur. So, in the continent, on the continent right now, a lot of that has happened. That's what, you know, it's a step right up. Once you got your money, step right on up. And some places here in this country as well, a step right on up. So now that will make me kind of leery as to going to some of these different houses to be initiated with initiating whites, and to know that the Orisha or the Loa or Obasam is not even there. So I would be kind of worried about something on my head that's not supposed to be on my head.
We have to ask the question, why would someone from a complete different historic and genetic background abandon their ancestors? And so I don't know why, because I haven't spoken to, you know, majority of the members there. But I know that generally if a post comes up with some foolishness, you might have 200-300 posts on that one thread. But when we ask that question, and a few others, and forgive me if I don't mention your names, you know who you are that asked the question, so I don't want to dismiss anyone. But there are some of us that have asked that question, and every time, brother, the forum goes silent. So I don't know if that's a spiritual thing. I don't know if it's an issue where fear sets in, but it appears to me that there's something, maybe of a spiritual nature, blocking us collectively from making a collective move. Because you're right, brother, this is what I think should happen. Those who really want to see a change should put together a group of spiritual warriors. And at least once a month, you have a collective ritual, either for a group or for an individual, whether it's financial, whether it's whatever the issue may be. Everyone goes to their altar, their shrine, and they put in work for that person or that group. Every month we should do that, because I guarantee you the white folks is doing that every day. I would say every month as a start, and then maybe it can, because they're doing it every day. They got symbols and sigils everywhere. We can't watch TV. We can't read a newspaper. We can't do anything. There are even spells in the barcode, brother.